News traveled fast across the stars. Within hours, every communication network in the Valoran Empire was filled with reports about the attack on Princess Yuna's convoy. The official channel spoke of a brave defense by the Silver Guard, but the soldiers who survived told a different story. They told the truth. By the time the rescue ships arrived, everyone in the galaxy knew about the human who had destroyed an army of war robots with his bare hands. Videos spread across the networks. Images of Tay standing alone among the wreckage became the most viewed content in a century. People from 1,000 different worlds watched and could not believe what they were seeing. The Emperor himself came to meet the returning convoy. He was an old man with silver hair and hard eyes. He had ruled the Valoran Empire for 60 years. He had seen wars and rebellions and disasters of every kind. Nothing surprised him anymore. Until now. He watched the recording of the battle 3 times. Then he watched it again. When it ended, he sat in silence for a long time. "Bring the human to me," he finally said. Tay was brought to the throne room, still wearing bandages from his wounds. He walked slowly but steadily, his back straight, his head held high. He stopped in front of the Emperor and bowed respectfully. "Kang Tay of Earth," the Emperor said. "Do you know why I asked for you?" "I can guess, Your Majesty." "Then tell me." Tay looked up at the old ruler. "You want to know if I am a threat?" The Emperor nodded slowly. "Yes, that is exactly what I want to know." "I am not," Tay said simply. "I am here to protect your daughter. Nothing more. Nothing less. You destroyed 47 military robots designed to kill small armies. You did this alone, without weapons, without armor. How am I supposed to believe you are not a threat?" Tay was silent for a moment. Then he spoke carefully. "Your Majesty, I understand your fear. When we first traveled to the stars, we thought we would find monsters waiting for us. Instead, we found that we were the monsters. Humans have a darkness inside us that we work very hard to control. The galaxy sees us as weak because we choose to be peaceful. But peace is a choice, not a nature." He met the Emperor's eyes directly. "I will never use my abilities against the Valoran Empire or its people. I will never harm anyone who does not try to harm those under my protection. This is not a promise from a soldier. This is a promise from a human being. And humans keep their promises." The Emperor studied him for a long moment. Then, slowly, he began to laugh. "You are truly remarkable," he said. "I thought I was teaching humanity a lesson by making you marry my daughter. But it seems the lesson was for us instead." He stood from his throne and walked down the steps toward Tay. When he reached him, he placed a hand on his shoulder. "From this day forward, you are no longer a servant or a symbol. You are a member of the royal family in truth. You will have all the rights and honors of a prince of the empire." Gasps filled the throne room. The nobles could not believe what they were hearing, but the Emperor was not finished. "More than that," he continued, "I am creating a new title for you. You will be called the Shield of the Empire. You will protect not just my daughter, but our entire people. Any enemy who threatens the Valoran Empire will answer to you first." Tay bowed his head. "I am honored, Your Majesty." "Do not be honored yet," the Emperor said with a slight smile. "You have no idea how much work this will be." The ceremony that followed was unlike anything the Empire had seen before. Tay was given new clothes made from the finest materials. He was given weapons crafted by the greatest smiths in the galaxy. He was given a position of power that no outsider had ever held. But more important than any of these things was what happened after the ceremony. Yuna found him alone on a balcony, looking up at the stars. She walked up beside him and followed his gaze. "You miss your home," she said quietly. "Sometimes," he admitted. "But home is not just a place. Home is the people you care about." Yuna turned to look at him. Do you care about anyone here? Tay was silent for a moment. Then he turned to face her. I did not want this marriage, he said honestly. I accepted it because my people needed me to. I expected to spend my life as a servant, ignored and forgotten. And now? Now. He paused, searching for the right words. Now I have found something I did not expect. What is that? He reached out and took her hand. She did not pull away. I found someone worth protecting, he said softly. Not because of duty, not because of promises, because I want to. Yuna felt her heart beating faster. She had been raised to believe that emotions were weakness. She had been taught that love was a tool for politics, nothing more. But looking into Tay's eyes, she felt all of that teaching crumble away. My people called you a battle deity, she said. They say you fought like a god of war made flesh. Tay shook his head. I am not a god. I am just a man who found something worth fighting for. And what is that? He smiled, and for the first time since she had met him, the smile reached his eyes. You. Yuna felt tears forming in her eyes. She had never cried in front of anyone before. But somehow, with him, it felt safe. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. He held her gently, carefully, as if she was the most precious thing in the universe. And in that moment, standing on a balcony under alien stars, two people from different worlds found something neither of them had expected. They found each other far away. On a small blue planet called Earth, people watched the news from the Valoran Empire with wonder. They saw one of their own standing beside royalty, respected and honored by an empire that had once looked down on all. Humanity. They saw the proof that humans were not weak. They saw the truth that the galaxy was only beginning to understand. Humanity was not a species to be pitied. Humanity was a species to be respected. And if anyone ever forgot that lesson, there was now a battle deity standing among the stars to remind them. His name was Kang Tay, and his story was only beginning. Yuna watched from behind the rock where Tay had left her. She could not look away. She could not breathe. The human ran toward the robots with nothing but his bare hands. It was madness. It was suicide. No living creature could fight machines designed for war. But Tay was not fighting like a living creature. He was fighting like something else entirely. The first robot swung its metal fist at his head. Tay ducked under it, grabbed the arm, and twisted. The metal screamed as it bent in ways it was not meant to bend. He used the broken arm as a weapon, smashing it into the robot's face with enough force to crack the armor. Before the first robot hit the ground, Tay was already moving to the next one. He jumped onto its back, wrapped his legs around its neck, and pulled. His muscles strained. His bones creaked. But slowly, impossibly, the robot's head began to separate from its body. Metal tore. Wires snapped. The machine fell. 3 robots fired at him at once. Tay grabbed a fallen piece of debris and used it as a shield. The blast pushed him back, his feet digging into the dirt, but he did not fall. When the firing stopped, he threw the debris at the nearest attacker, then charged after it. His fist punched through the robot's chest plate. His fingers found the power core and ripped it out. The robot died instantly. Captain Hana and her remaining soldiers watched in complete silence. They had trained their entire lives for combat. They had faced enemies across a dozen worlds. But they had never seen anything like this. That is not possible, one soldier whispered. Humans are weak. Their bodies are fragile. How is he doing this? Hannah shook her head slowly. I do not know. Tay moved through the robots like a storm through a forest. He did not stop. He did not slow down. Every movement was perfect. Every strike was fatal. He broke arms and legs and heads with his bare hands. He used fallen machines as weapons against their brothers. He turned their own strength against them. His body should have failed. His muscles should have torn. His bones should have shattered. But something was keeping him together. Something deep inside him was burning, pushing him beyond the limits of normal flesh. It was the thing that humans had forgotten they possessed. The ancient fire that had once made them the most dangerous creatures on their world. The survival instinct of prey that had learned to become predators. When pushed to the edge of death, humans did not break. They evolved. Tay fought for minutes that felt like hours. The ground became covered with broken machines. Oil and sparks mixed with dust and blood. The air filled with the smell of burning metal. Finally, there were no more robots standing. The last one fell at Tay's feet, its head crushed by a stone he had picked up from the ground. Tay stood alone in the middle of the destruction. His body was covered in cuts and burns. His clothes were almost completely gone. Blood dripped from his hands, his face, his chest, but he was alive. He was standing. He had won. Captain Hannah was the first to move. She walked slowly toward him, her weapon lowered. She stopped a few feet away and looked at the battlefield around them. 47 war robots lay destroyed. Machines that were designed to kill entire armies. One human had defeated them all. How? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. How did you do this? Tay turned to look at her. His eyes were different now. They burned with a light she had never seen before. For a moment, he did not look human at all. He looked like something ancient. Something terrible. Then he blinked, and he was just Tay again. Just a quiet human who stood outside the princess's door. Just the man they had mocked and insulted for months. Humans are not strong, he said softly. Our bodies are weak. Our senses are dull. We cannot run fast or jump high or see in the dark. He looked down at his bloody hands. But we learned something long ago on a world that tried to kill us every day. We learned that strength is not enough. Speed is not enough. The only thing that matters is the will to survive. He closed his eyes. When a human truly wants to live, when a human truly wants to protect something, there is nothing in the universe that can stop them. Not pain, not fear, not death itself. He opened his eyes and looked at Captain Hannah. This is what we are. This is what we have always been. We are the species that refuses to die. Hannah felt tears running down her face. She did not know why she was crying. Fear? Relief? Something else? She dropped to her knees. One by one, the surviving soldiers did the same. They knelt before the human, their heads bowed, their weapons on the ground. Una walked out from behind her rock. She moved slowly, stepping over broken machines and fallen bodies. When she reached Tay, she stopped in front of him and looked into his eyes. You saved us, she said quietly. You saved all of us. Tay shook his head. I did what I promised to do. Una reached out and touched his face. Her fingers came away covered in blood. You are hurt, she said. I will heal. How do you know? Tay almost smiled. Because humans always heal. It is what we do. Una looked at him for a long moment. Then she did something no Valoran princes had ever done before. She took off her outer robe and wrapped it around his shoulders. The soldiers gasped. To give a royal garment to a commoner was unthinkable. To give it to a human was impossible. But Una did not care. You are not a message, she said firmly. You are not a joke. You are not nothing. She took his hand in hers. You are my husband. And from this day forward, anyone who insults you insults me. Tay looked at her hand holding his. For the first time since he had arrived on this world, something in his heart began to change. He did not speak. He did not need to. Some things did not require words. Around them, the survivors began the long work of cleaning up the battlefield. But every few moments, they would look at the human standing with their princes, and they would remember what they had seen. They would remember the day a human became something more, something that the galaxy had never seen before, something like a god of war. 3 months after the wedding, Princess Yuna was ordered to visit the outer provinces. Her father wanted her to inspect the border settlements and show the flag of the empire to the common people. It was a simple journey, meant to last only 2 weeks. Tay went with her, of course. He had no choice. Where she went, he followed. The convoy was large and impressive. 20 armored vehicles carried soldiers, servants, and supplies. The princes rode in a special transport at the center, surrounded by the finest warriors of the Valoran Empire. They were called the Silver Guard, and they were famous across the galaxy for their skill in battle. Tay rode in a small vehicle at the back of the convoy. No one wanted him near the princess during official travel. He was still the human, still the joke, still nothing. But he did not complain. He watched the landscape pass by through the small window and counted the seconds between each checkpoint. He memorized the route. He noted the positions of the guards. He did what soldiers do. On the 5th day of the journey, they entered a narrow valley between 2 great mountains. The road was rough and twisted, and the convoy had to slow down. The mountain blocked the communication signals, making it impossible to call for help if something went wrong. Tay felt the change before it happened. The air felt different. The birds had stopped singing. The guards were talking too loudly, not paying attention to their surroundings. He pressed the communication button in his vehicle. "This is Tay. Stop the convoy. Something is wrong." The driver laughed. "Be quiet, human. You do not give orders here." "Please," Tay said, his voice urgent now. "Stop the vehicles. We need to." The first missile hit the lead vehicle. The explosion was massive. Fire and metal flew through the air. The convoy broke apart as drivers tried to escape. Screams filled the communication channels. Chaos ruled. Tay kicked open the door of his vehicle and ran toward the princess's transport. All around him, soldiers were dying. Figures in black armor appeared on the mountain slopes, firing weapons that cut through the Valoran guards like paper. The attackers were not aliens. They were machines. War robots made of dark metal, each one taller than a man, each one carrying weapons that could destroy a building. Someone had sent them here. Someone wanted the princess dead. Tay did not stop running. He jumped over burning wreckage. He rolled under flying debris. His body moved on its own, driven by instinct and training. Bullets flew past his head, close enough to feel the heat. He reached the princess's transport just as a robot tried to tear open the door. The machine was 3 times his size, its metal claws sharp enough to cut stone. Tay did not hesitate. He jumped onto the robot's back and drove his combat knife into the gap between its head and body. The blade found the main power cable and cut it clean. The robot fell forward, sparks flying from its neck. Tay pulled open the transport door and found Yuna inside, unhurt but terrified. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with shock. "Come with me," Tay said, reaching out his hand. Now, she took his hand without thinking. He pulled her out of the vehicle and pushed her behind a large rock. "Stay here," he ordered. "Do not move. Do not make a sound. What are you going to do?" she asked, her voice shaking. Tay looked at the battlefield around them. The Silver Guard was failing. More than half of them were already dead. The robots were advancing, destroying everything in their path. "I am going to do what I should have done from the beginning," he said. He picked up a fallen guard's rifle and checked the power level. Half full. Not ideal, but enough. Then he turned and walked toward the enemy. The first robot saw him coming and raised its weapon. Tay shot it in the eye sensor before it could fire. The machine stumbled, blind, and Tay was already moving past it. A second robot swung its arm at him. Tay dropped to his knees, slid under the attack, and fired 3 shots into the machine's leg joints. It collapsed, unable to stand. 3 more robots turned to face him. Tay threw the rifle at one of them, distracting it for half a second. In that time, he closed the distance and drove his knife through its chest panel, reaching the core processor inside. The other 2 fired at him. He used the falling robot as a shield, absorbing the blasts. Then he grabbed the dead machine's weapon and returned fire. 1 robot went down. The other charged at him with its claws extended. Tay waited until the last possible moment. Then he stepped aside, grabbed the robot's arm, and used its own momentum to throw it into a nearby rock. The impact crushed its head. More robots were coming. Dozens of them. The ground shook with their footsteps. Tay stood in the middle of the battlefield, alone. His clothes were torn and burned. Blood ran from a cut on his forehead. But his eyes were calm. His breathing was steady. He looked at the approaching army of machines and felt something awaken inside him. Something old. Something that humanity had buried long ago when they thought they no longer needed it. The survival instinct of a species that had clawed its way to the stars through blood and fire. The robots stopped moving. Their sensors detected something strange. The human in front of them was changing. His heart rate had increased. His body temperature had risen. Chemical changes were happening in his blood. He was not running away. He was preparing to fight. The leader of the surviving Silver Guards, a woman named Captain Hana, watched from behind a broken vehicle. She had lost most of her team. She had thought they were all going to die. But now she saw the human standing alone against an army, and she saw him smile. What is he doing? One of her soldiers asked, his voice filled with fear. Is he crazy? Hana did not answer. She was too busy watching. Tay rolled his shoulders and cracked his neck. He dropped the weapon he was holding and raised his empty hands. All right, he said quietly to himself. Let us do this the old way. Then he ran forward to meet the machines, and the world changed forever. The wedding was quick and cold. There were no flowers. There was no music. Yuna wore a simple white dress, and Tay wore the same plain uniform he arrived in. The priest spoke the words fast, as if he wanted to finish as soon as possible. The nobles watched with bored expressions on their faces. When it was over, no one clapped. No one smiled. Yuna turned and walked away without looking at Tay. He followed her silently, 2 steps behind, as he had been told to do. This was his life now. The first few weeks were difficult. Tay was moved from the cold east tower to a small room near Yuna's chambers. The room was better than before. It had a proper bed, a desk, and a window with glass. But it was still a servant's room. Still a reminder of his place. Every day, Tay woke before sunrise. He washed his face with cold water, dressed in the simple clothes they gave him, and waited outside Yuna's door. When she needed something, he was there. When she did not, he stood in silence. The court loved to mock him. One morning, a young noble named Lord Q walked up to Tay with a smile on his face. Q was handsome and tall, with silver hair that fell past his shoulders. He was known for his sharp tongue and cruel jokes. Good morning, little human, Q said loudly, so everyone nearby could hear. Did you sleep well on the floor? Or do your kind prefer sleeping in trees, like the animals you are? The nobles around them laughed. Tay said nothing. Q leaned closer. I asked you a question, creature. Tay looked at him calmly. I slept well. Thank you for asking. Q's smile faltered. He had expected anger. He had expected tears. But Tay's voice was as flat and steady as stung. You have no pride, Q said, his voice now sharp with frustration. No fire? No spirit. How can your species survive when you are so weak? We survive, Tay said simply, because we must. Q stared at him for a long moment. Then he spat on the ground near Tay's feet and walked away. Tay did not react. He simply wiped the spot with his shoe and continued standing. Yuna watched this from across the courtyard. She saw everything. She saw how the nobles treated her human husband, how they mocked him and pushed him and tried to break him. But she also saw something else. She saw that he never broke. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. The mockery continued, but Tay remained unchanged. He carried heavy loads without complaint. He cleaned floors without complaint. He ate cold food without complaint. Whatever they gave him, he accepted. But late at night, when the palace was quiet, something different happened. Yuna could not sleep one night. She walked through the empty halls, her bare feet silent on the cold stone. She heard a strange sound coming from the training grounds. It was soft and rhythmic, like a heartbeat. She followed the sound until she reached a small courtyard hidden behind the eastern wall. There, under the pale light of 3 moons, she saw Tay. He was training. His body moved with impossible speed. His fists cut through the air like blades. His feet barely touched the ground as he spun and kicked and struck invisible enemies. Sweat covered his skin, but his breathing was controlled and steady. Yuna had seen warriors train before. She had watched the finest soldiers of the Valoran Empire practice their arts. But she had never seen anything like this. Tay moved like water and struck like fire. His movements were not beautiful or graceful. They were efficient. They were deadly. Every motion had a purpose. Every strike aimed at a vital point. He trained for hours. Yuna watched from the shadows, unable to look away. When he finally stopped, the first light of dawn was appearing on the horizon. He wiped the sweat from his face, took a deep breath, and walked back toward the palace. He passed right by her hiding spot, but did not stop. He did not look at her, but he said quietly, without turning his head, "You should sleep, princess. Tomorrow will be a long day." Yuna felt her face grow warm. He had known she was there. He had known the entire time. After that night, she began to watch him more carefully. She noticed things she had missed before. The way his eyes moved constantly, always checking doors and windows. The way he positioned himself between her and any stranger who came near. The way his hands were always ready, always prepared. One afternoon, during a formal dinner, a drunk noble threw a cup at Tay's head. Tay caught it without looking. His hand moved so fast that most people did not even see it happen. He simply placed the cup on a nearby table and continued standing. The drunk noble stared at him with wide eyes. How? How did you do that? Tay looked at him calmly. Do what, my lord? The noble opened his mouth, then closed it again. He had no answer. Yuna saw this too. She saw the speed. She saw the control. She began to realize that there was more to this human than anyone knew. One evening, she called him to her chambers. He came immediately, standing just inside the door with his hands behind his back. Close the door, she said. He did. Sit, she said, pointing to a chair. I prefer to stand. Princess, it was not a request. Tay paused for a moment, then sat down. It was the first time he had sat in her presence. Yuna studied him carefully. Who are you? She asked. I am your husband, princess. Kang Tay of Earth. No. She shook her head. That is what you are called. I am asking who you truly are. Tay was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke softly. I am a man who made a promise. A promise to whom? To my people. To my planet. To myself. Yuna leaned forward. What kind of promise? Tay met her eyes. For the first time, she saw something burning deep within them. Something ancient. Something powerful. I promised, he said slowly, that I would keep you safe. No matter what. No matter who tried to stop me. Yuna felt a chill run down her spine. Not fear. Something else. Something she could not name. Why? She whispered. Why would you make such a promise for someone who treats you like dirt? Tay smiled. It was a small smile, barely there, but it was real. Because Princess, he said, that is what humans do. He stood up and walked to the door. Before he left, he turned back to her. Sleep well. I will be outside if you need me. The door closed behind him. Yuna sat alone in her room for a long time. She thought about the human standing guard outside her door. She thought about his quiet strength, his endless patience, his strange and terrible purpose. For the first time in her life, she felt something she had never felt before. She felt safe, and she did not know how to feel about that. The great hall of the Valoran Empire was filled with light. Crystal pillars rose high into the ceiling, and strange music played softly in the air. Hundreds of alien nobles stood in their finest clothes, their silver skin shining under the glow of floating lamps. They whispered to each other, their dark eyes watching the small group of humans standing near the entrance. Kante stood at the front of the human group. He was 32 years old, with short black hair and a calm face. He wore a simple military uniform, clean but plain compared to the bright colors around him. His hands were behind his back, and his eyes looked straight ahead. He did not move. He did not speak. The Valoran people were tall and beautiful. Their bodies were slim, their movements graceful. They had ruled this part of the galaxy for thousands of years. To them, humans were new. Humans were weak. Humans were nothing. Is that him? A Valoran woman asked her friend. She pointed at Tay with a long finger. The one they are giving to our princess? Yes, her friend replied with a small laugh. Look at him. So small, so plain. The humans must hate their own kind to offer such a poor gift. Tay heard them. He understood their language perfectly. Earth had spent years learning Valoran speech before this meeting. But he did not react. His face stayed calm. His breathing stayed slow. At the far end of the hall, sitting on a throne made of white stone, was Princess Yuna. She was the third daughter of the Valoran Emperor. Her hair was long and black, unusual for her people. Her eyes were sharp and cold. She watched Tay with no expression on her face. This marriage was her father's idea. The Emperor wanted to test humanity. He wanted to see how far they would go to keep peace with the Valoran Empire. So he asked for a human spouse for his daughter. Not a prince. Not a leader. Just a common soldier. It was an insult wrapped in the shape of diplomacy. And humanity accepted. The human ambassador, a nervous man with gray hair, stepped forward and bowed deeply. Your Imperial Highness, he said, we present Kang Tay of Earth. He is a decorated soldier, a man of honor and discipline. We offer him as a symbol of peace between our peoples. The nobles laughed. They did not try to hide it. Some covered their mouths, but most let their mockery fill the room openly. Yuna raised one hand, and the hall became silent. A soldier, she said. Her voice was soft but cold. Not a scholar. Not an artist. A soldier. She looked at Tay for a long moment. Tell me, human, do you know why you are here? Tay met her eyes. I am here because my people asked me to come, he said. His voice was steady. And I am here because I said yes. The room went quiet. Even the nobles stopped their whispering. No one expected a human to speak so directly to the princess. Yuna tilted her head slightly. You said yes? You chose this fate? Yes. Why? Tay was silent for a moment. Then he spoke again. Because someone had to. Yuna studied him carefully. She had expected fear. She had expected begging, but this human showed neither. He stood before her like a stone in a river, unmoved by the current around him. "Very well," she said at last. "The marriage will happen in 3 days. Until then, the human will stay in the East Tower. He will be given food and clothing suitable for his station." The ambassador bowed again. "Thank you, Your Highness. We are grateful for your kindness." But Yuna was not finished. "Let me be clear," she said, looking at Tay. "This marriage is not love. It is not partnership. You are here because my father wished to teach your people a lesson. You are a message, human. Nothing more." Tay nodded slowly. "I understand. Do you?" Yuna stood from her throne and walked down the steps toward him. She stopped just a few feet away. She was taller than him by almost a head. "You will live in my palace. You will eat my food. You will wear my colors. But you will never be my equal. You will never be my husband in truth. Do you still understand?" Tay looked up at her. His dark eyes were calm, almost gentle. "Yes, I understand completely." Something flickered in Yuna's expression. She could not read this human. He did not act like the others. He did not seem afraid or angry. He seemed at peace. She turned away from him. Taken to his quarters. 2 guards stepped forward and led Tay out of the great hall. As he walked, he could hear the nobles laughing again. They called him names in their language. They made jokes about his size, his plain face, his simple clothes. Tay walked on. He did not look back. That night, alone in a cold room in the East Tower, Tay sat on the floor and closed his eyes. The room had no bed, only a thin mat in the corner. The window had no glass, and cold wind blew throughly. This was how they treated him. This was what they thought of humans. But Tay did not complain. He had slept in worse places. He had faced colder nights. He had survived things that would break most people. He thought about his home. He thought about his mother, who had cried when he told her he was leaving. He thought about his younger sister, who had punched his arm and told him not to die. He thought about Earth, blue and green and full of life. He had chosen this path, not because he wanted glory, not because he wanted power. He chose it because his people needed someone to stand in this place, someone who could endure, someone who would not break. The wind howled through the window. Tay opened his eyes and looked at the stars. 3 days, he whispered to himself. 3 days until forever begins. He lay down on the cold floor and closed his eyes. Sleep came quickly, as it always did for soldiers. His breathing slowed. His body relaxed, but even in sleep, some part of him remained alert. Some part of him was always ready, because Kang Tay was not just a soldier. He was something the Valoran Empire had never seen before, and soon they would learn what that meant.